So let's see, we've got, alright, looks like a Esper control deck. We'll take it. So we're on the play here. Turn 3 Lingering Souls can be our pressure. I'm going to lead off on the Sea Chrome Coast, just in case for some reason we want to Path to Exile. And it looks like this is going to be Tron. And right on time there's a Spreading Seas, which happens to be a pretty good way to shut off a Tron piece. So I'm just going to go ahead and use it here. So our opponent's cracking the star for green. This could mean Ancient Stirrings. Yep, okay. So unfortunately, our deck, sometimes the clock is fast, other times it's not. Lingering Souls is definitely not the same as a card like Geist of St. Traft, for instance. Just in terms of how quickly we can win the game. So, looks like our opponent found another Urza's Tower there. So, just going to go ahead and play the Lingering Souls. The Detention Sphere we can use if we see something. Even the Chromatic Star I would have been okay with Sphearing, but we need to get something on the board. So these spirits, hopefully they can do some good work. But now our opponent is moving towards having Tron online, even though we Spreading Seas the tower. The Tron deck is consistent, so we see Expedition map here. And it may be that we want to, and I think we do, want to just go ahead and Detention Sphere that map, because if our opponent does get that Urza's Mine, we're going to be in a world of trouble. So I'm going to go ahead, Detention Sphere the map, hope that our opponent doesn't already have the mine. Of course, that would be the worst case scenario. So there's a star. So we'll see if our opponent has something like another Sylvan Scrying or another Expedition map in order to find that missing Tron piece. Although our opponent did make a black mana with that star, so that symbols that Collective Brutality is a possibility here. And it's good that we actually didn't play out the Esper the Prodigy if we do end up getting hit by a Collective Brutality. The Black-Green Tron deck has become pretty popular online. And our opponents probably trying... It seems like a Collective Brutality is about to be cast, so the question would be what modes, what discards. That's kind of what's probably running through our opponent's head right now. So yep, there's the Collective Brutality. We see another Brutality get discarded, so that's kind of scary just because our opponent's still got 3 cards in hand. We know that there's cards like Ugin, cards like Ulamog, Karn, lots of cards that would just be really bad news here for us. So we're definitely going to attack here with the Spirit. And then not much we can do besides flashback Lingering Souls and play a copy of Jace Vryn's Prodigy. So there's a star. We see how this deck has kind of got a lot of redundant pieces. That's the Tron deck for you. Just kind of crossing our fingers at this point, hoping that Tron is not assembled, which it's not where you want to be at all. It's just not a good feeling where, okay, there's another power plant. That's fine. We've dodged the mine, but our opponent still is getting towards the point where they can just cast stuff with naturally without even having Tron some big spells, because already at 5 lands is our opponent. So we drew an Inquisition of Kozilek. Kind of like to use it, but it definitely could brick here, meaning that our opponent might not have anything we want to take with it, but still going to go for it. So at least we have the information of what we're up against. So it's 2 Ulamogs and a Karn. So our opponent is, like we were predicting, just missing that Tron piece. We're kind of hoping that our opponent can't find it, so it's going to be a bit of a race in those terms, and in that if our opponent finds the Tron piece, we're kind of not going to win this game, most likely. I mean, we're just kind of out of it at that point. So we can attack for 7 here, which is going to be the play. And just going to pass. Our opponent's got Karn, but still needs two lands. So here's a power plant. So 1 more land would mean our opponent can play a Karn, even if it's not a Tron land. So let's start with the Jace loot. We know exactly what's in our opponent's hand. There's a Snapcaster Mage. Okay. So not really anything we want to flash back, but the 2/1 body could actually be really nice here, because we can flash it in along with hitting our opponent with this tar pit. So say our opponent hits the land here, right? And they go Karn. What are they going to do at that point? You can get rid of the tar pit, which is probably what our opponent is going to do, but then we can flash in the Snapcaster Mage and have 5 points of power coming across here. So I believe that is exactly what's going to happen. Flash in Snapcaster Mage. Doesn't really matter what we target here, and that's going to be the game. So our opponent got a little bit unlucky, but you know what? That's what you're signing up for when playing the Tron deck. That 1 Spreading Seas kind of did a lot of work. Even though our opponent found another tower, it was pretty important to just kind of... You really want your opponent to only have 1 Tron piece in play at once. So we were able to fade the mine there. Sideboarding, we want the Stony Silences just to get rid of those Chromatic Stars and Spheres. And then also, our opponent could potentially be on Oblivion Stones as well. Negate is pretty good as well. And Ancestral Vision to draw cards. We saw our opponent has Collective Brutality, so we're able to get under that with the Suspended Ancestral and kind of gas back up. So in terms of what to take out, Fatal Push is basically a non-card. We were lucky to not draw any in the last game. So we're definitely going to take out all of the Fatal Pushes. The Ghostly Prison as well. Our opponent is not going to be going wide with small creatures, so that's a pretty easy cut. And the discard and the pass are okay. Sometimes the decks play Wormcoil Engine, sometimes they don't. But Path can hit an Ulamog if it comes to that. Steel of the Godhead is fine, not great. Similarly, Inquisition of Kozilek, it's not really where you want to be. So we've got a number of cards that are pretty marginal cards in the matchup. We've got some really nice cards in the matchup, like Spreading Seas, Geist of Saint Traft. Zur would have been great that game. But I'm going to just go ahead and board out an Inquisition, because we don't want too much discard in this matchup. So, alright. I think we can work with this. It's not a fast hand by any means, because we may not be able to suspend the Ancestral until turn 2. But at the same time, it doesn't really feel like a hand we're supposed to mulligan. Seal the Godhead, as I mentioned, it's not that great in the matchup because just because the life gain isn't super important. So I'm going to start on the Creeping Tar Pit here. Now that we've drawn the Jace, we can potentially loot away some cards. We'll see what our opponent's got. So it's a Sylvan Scrying. That's going to find a tower. And there's a Geist. We don't have the third land for it quite yet, though. So I think we want to Inquisition. See what our opponent's got. So we see, interesting, our opponent has a Nature's Claim as well as an Expedition map. So we can take one of those, but the unfortunate part of this whole thing is that our opponent already has the 2 missing Tron pieces in this scenario, plus a Karn liberated. So I'm going to take the map, and the reason why I'm doing that is in case we do pick up a Spreading Seas, which would be really great, we could then use it on one of the lands, although our opponent does have the Nature's Claim to potentially get rid of a Spreading Seas. So our opponent kind of has us covered in multiple directions. So if we do draw something like a Thoughtseize, maybe we can get rid of the Karn, stop our opponent from really getting a major heavy-hitting card onto the table. But here we drew a land, so it may be that we just want to play the Geist of St. Traft and use that as our form of pressure, because our opponent can't exile the Geist with Karn, so it's actually not the easiest card to deal with. And we also have the Steal of the Godhead, which we can put on the Geist. We just have to be a little bit worried about that Nature's Claim in our opponent's hand. So Karn could come down here and exile a land, or just go for our hand, which would also make some sense. Now, I think we may be able to beat a Karn, but if our opponent has something also like an Ulamog or an Ugin or another big spell, one of the payoff cards, that's going to be most likely backbreaking. So expect to see the Karn plus here. That's what I would think. Although, alright, no. Actually, interesting. Our opponent's going for our lands. Not sure what to make of this. And there's a Seachrome Coast off the top. So I think we want to try to get this Karn off the table. So we can attack our opponent with the Geist. Then we've got this Angel coming in, which can go after the Karn. So Karn is down without us having to expend a huge amount of resources. Now the question is, do we want to deploy Jace or Snapcaster Mage? We could go Snapcaster plus Inquisition, take away either the Nature's Claim or something else that might be hiding in our opponent's hand, or just go for Jace Vryn's Prodigy and start looting. So I don't think we care about the Nature's Claim too much, but I'm still going to go for the Snapcaster Mage because our opponent could have drawn something else, like maybe an Oblivion Stone. You never know. Although, if our opponent had an Oblivion Stone, probably should have already used it. But the thing is about the Snapcaster Mage in this matchup is that we don't have anything great to flashback. So we're just going to take away this Nature's Claim. Unfortunately, we see the Ghost Quarter we already knew about, but also another Karn and an Ulamog. So our opponent may not be able to immediately cast Ulamog this turn, but it looks like Karn is going to come down. That's going to be a major problem. So we'll see if our opponent continues to go after our lands, or maybe starts to shift gears a little bit. Initially, on the first option, I thought that our opponent maybe should have just started plussing Karn, but this Steel of the Godhead could be quite relevant. Now that Nature's Claim is gone, we can put the Steel on. So it looks like, yep, our opponent is going to plus Karn. So I'm going to go ahead and discard this Jace Vryn's Prodigy. Keep Zur. If we draw another land, it's a nice card to have access to. And remember, our Ancestral Vision is ticking, ticking, ticking. Now we found a Thoughtseize, which is actually really nice because we can take away our opponent's Ulamog in hand. So that was a great pickup. So I think we want to just go ahead and use the Thoughtseize here, because Ulamog coming down is really scary. Although it looks like another Karn was picked up, but I think we still have to go ahead and take away the Ulamog here. And now the question is, we know our opponent has another Karn. We could attack our opponent. We could actually just go ahead and start attacking our opponent, because we know our opponent has another Karn. So we could go ahead and just start going after our opponent's life total. So we have essentially 8 damage, would put our opponent down to 9, with the potential of maybe a Steel of the Godhead next turn to finish our opponent off. So I kind of like just going immediately for our opponent's life total, because we know about that other Karn. Now this is definitely a risky line to take. Our opponent has this Karn. They could potentially minus with the Karn, exile something, then play the other Karn, exile another thing. The Ghost Quarter comes into the equation. So there's a lot of moving pieces here, but if our opponent just, say, pluses Karn, makes us exile a card, and says go, then we can just all of a sudden have Steel the Godhead, throw it on Geist, get in for potentially a lethal attack. So, pretty happy with the way this game is going. It looks like our opponent is going to go after one of our lands, maybe play the other Karn here. Okay, so the other Karn is going to come down. We'll see what this one goes after. And so, alright. So our lands are gone. We're pretty much all in on what's on board here. We are going to get to draw some cards, though. So that's pretty nice here. And that's going to pick us up a bunch more lands. Perfect. So here, a couple of options. I think I like going after the Karn with the Angel, because we don't have a lethal attack this turn. I think I like this. So we can take the Karn out. We don't even really need to commit this Jace to the board. In fact, I like not playing it because our opponent could have something like an Oblivion Stone as one of the potential cards that could beat us. So, and if our opponent does draw O-Stone, they would have to immediately play Stone and crack it on the same turn. And it looks like this is the match here.